Good morning and welcome to Ag Talking Raw, where I talk raw about agriculture and other things that are on my mind. I'm buttoning my shirt. I'm not doing anything else. Anyway, I would just want to talk a little bit about the video that I made on the One Lonely Farmer channel. What did I title that damn thing? I forget what it was, but give me a second and I'll find out. More work, less money. So, more work, less money. Okay, so when I started farming on my own in 1991, I actually farmed before that. When I graduated high school, I did not go to college. I started farming on my own. I started with hay a little bit, and it was mulch hay. I supplied a guy down the road here. He was a contractor or an excavator, and he needed mulch hay, and I was able to keep that money. But I've always farmed my entire life, from the time I was old enough to, wash cows' tits and, milk cows and spread manure and do other things. I was always on the farm, and I always loved farming. Went through some hard times with my family then. Obviously, I grew up in 1991. I got married, had Timothy in 94, Haley in 99, Joe in 2000, and then William in 2018. Obviously, Peyton was in there as well, but we always farmed, and I was always able to make a good enough living that I could support my family, and things were pretty good. Buy pieces of equipment if I needed them. Repairs were not a problem. Pay back the operating loans and other things. Well, in recent years, it's become more and more difficult to do these things. We can blame COVID. We can blame Joe Biden. I lay a lot of the blame on Joe Biden. I do. But I think it's much deeper than that. I think that it started, like a lot of guys are saying, like 40 years ago. Well, I kicked that back even farther. Maybe 45 years ago. I'm 53 years old, but there was a great expansion in agriculture in the 1970s. There was, and then that led to the farm crisis of the 1980s. And I was a kid then, but I do remember it, and I remember it hard times, and the threat of bankruptcy always loomed on us for several years there, and we did some things to to get around that and avoid that problem, which we can find ourselves in that situation right now. Things are tough. Things are beyond tough. I can't buy the parts that I need to repair the equipment. I have to really actually repair the parts that are broken, and that's not entirely 100% the truth, but it is. It's kind of tough to do this. But the bigger problem is not the buying the parts to repair the equipment that is broken. It's being able to afford to buy the parts to repair the equipment that's broken. So corn's something like, an average, or at the CBOT, Chicago Board of Trade, is something like $4 a bushel, somewhere in there, give or take 10 cents, depending on your region or where you're at. And soybeans are below 10 bucks here, below 10 bucks. Oh, wow. It's like, how could this happen? We went through some pretty good pricing, under the Trump administration. It actually wasn't the pricing of the grain. It was the price of input costs that were low enough that it made it, a profitable proposition. And then, of course, the Joe Biden administration comes in. We've got COVID. If you understand what COVID was, it was the flu, It was the flu. People are still getting shots, and they're finding out that their kids are getting autism and shit like that, shutting down myocarditis, which never was a problem, but now is in young people. Old people with memory loss and, just complete, death, blood clots, the unexplainable blood clots and stuff. And, lo and behold, you find out they had 16 COVID shots, and they're just a freaking mess. And there are people that I'm close to that have had the shots because they wanted to get on with their lives, and their government told them that it was the way to do it, and they've got problems as well. But that was just the beginning of it. Now, during COVID, I thought that we had it pretty good because we weren't under the restrictions. We could drive down to the mushroom barns and get unloaded in no time at all. We could deliver corn and soybeans if we had to with no problem at all. It was great. But the input costs, the supply chain issues, those are still having lasting ripple effects down through this economy. Now, there's going to be some idiots that come on here and say, oh, well, it's Trump's tariffs. It's Trump's tariffs. No, no, I'm afraid you're wrong. Trump's tariffs have really not affected us in a direct way. Indirectly, I could say that it has, because, countries that have been taking advantage of the United States for many years are now looking at us like, hey, you assholes, you found us out, and now we're going to put a hurting on you. Well, how do you hurt a population? You bankrupt its farmers. You make it difficult. You make it almost impossible to produce the food that's necessary. And then there's this whole thing that, oh, well, the United States doesn't produce enough food for its own public. Well, that's not entirely true either. When there's a no tariff on agricultural goods, which there's no tariff on agricultural goods coming in or going out of the country. Now parts and pieces and equipment, yes, there is. But agricultural goods, I don't know if there's, I don't know about I'm not 100% sure about the tariffs on agricultural equipment and stuff, but whatever, we can make it here. Made it here for a century, then, over a century, made agricultural products here, plows and cultivators and planters and horse-drawn stuff, right on up to, the modern tractors and stuff. It was only in the recent 25 years or 20 years, I would say, that the bigger stuff left the shores. It's like John Deere has their 6R series is made in Germany. Okay. 8Rs are here, 7Rs are here. Some of them are made in Italy, some of them are made in Mexico. I know my windrower has a lot of parts that are made in Mexico, shipped to Iowa and built in Iowa, but still, they're making this world market. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% how much those tariffs actually affect the things that we buy. I know that it shouldn't affect the potash, the phosphate that we bring into this country, and nitrogen. We used to produce all of those things here. Phosphate came from Florida, potash came from Maine, and, they shut that stuff down. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, well, we mine potash in Michigan or wherever it is else yes, there are potash and phosphate mines all over the country, but the ones that I know were the largest deposits were Maine and Florida. And nitrogen is a process that is done. They pull the nitrogen out of the air, unless it's like ammonia nitrogen, which is a little different. But I'm not 100% sure of those things. Now, if you're a non-farmer and you see a guy out there spreading fertilizer and you're making, oh, well, he's using chemical fertilizers. Everything that we come in contact with has a chemical makeup. This shirt is cotton with polyfibers in it, right? Cotton polyester thread. Cotton shirt, polyester thread to put it together with. Okay, fine, whatever. Cotton has a chemical makeup. Commercial fertilizer is the technical term for the fertilizer you buy from the fertilizer plant, because they are natural elements that come from mines in the earth. They're not taking oil to make like the polyester thread. They're not taking oil to make potash or phosphate or nitrogen. Now, it takes oil to do that, the mining equipment, the electric, and everything else that it takes to produce these products, these processes. I think nitrogen takes a lot of electricity. I'm not 100% sure, but I've never been through a nitrogen plant. I don't know. I've never seen a phosphate mine or a potash mine. There's not things that I would frequent. It would be kind of cool to go see them, to see where these products that we use come from. But when you have a idiot come on and says, you're using chemical fertilizers. Well, yeah, so is organic fertilizer. It's got a chemical makeup, the chemical makeup, but it's not derived from oil like most people would think that it is. They are natural elements, whatever kind of fertilizer it is. Some are more available than others, some break down faster than others, some are more expensive than others, some work better than others, but they are, when you talk about commercial fertilizers or fertilizers that are like NP and K, which are the three main fertilizer blends that you have. You can add boron, zinc, and molybdenum, and copper, whatever you want. The trace elements are different as well. They're not chemical fertilizers. fertilizers, they're commercial fertilizers that are mined from the soil. They come from the soil. Yes, mined from the soil. So there's that. But they've got really, really expensive since COVID, since 2020. Donald Trump's out of office, COVID comes in, we've got inflation. The problem is that American farm products, the ones that we produce, or world farm products for that matter, have just kind of stayed stagnant, or gone down. $16 for soybeans in 2021. It's under $10 now. We've lost $11 or $6. Corn, $7.35 in 2022, 2023, 21, 22, 23, in there, because I got it. It's below, it's at $4. A little bit above for me because we have the basis and there's a deficit in corn here. But honest to God, it's $4 a bushel. Fertilizer, just nitrogen alone was $635 a ton for me here. Well, $635 a ton to throw on hay doesn't pay. $900 a ton for your blend, or $800 to $900 a ton for your blend, doesn't pay. You're just not getting it back. And I have a broken combine. My straw chopper's broken. Not terribly broken, but broken enough that I cannot use it. I need a hub. I need bearings. I need an idler pulley with bearings. And it's got those three things: a hub, bearings for a pulley, and an idler pulley for a belt, which the belt is shot, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's not shot, it's damaged. That's over $1,000 for those three things. And I can hold each one of them. One of them I can hold all three of those things in one hand. That's it. There's nothing special about this stuff other than it's CNH. Case New Holland. John Deere. There is a computer control unit in my diesel exhaust fluid tank. Diesel exhaust fluid, government juice? That's urea. They dissolve urea into diesel exhaust, into water, distilled water, and come up with a 30% solution that you pump into the exhaust after it comes out of the catalytic converter to go into the atmosphere to, apparently it does something with NOx, nitrous oxide. Don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's what it does. There's a sensor in the bottom. It's a temperature sensor. Temperature. It's called the Tri-Sensor Kit. A Tri-Sensor Kit. And that Tri-Sensor Kit is your level, your temperature, and they don't call the third one anything. They call it undocumented, but that one will detect whether that diesel exhaust fluid is water or whether it is actual diesel exhaust fluid. If you put water into that DEF tank, it will throw the code and shut you down, and you'll have to drain it out and then go through the process of purging and reintroducing it. I never did it, but I know there's a lot of guys that have done it and they cause themselves problems. And when I bought the machine, I told the guy, I said, well, I'm just going to throw water in that thing. He says, no, you cannot. There's a sensor in there and it will stop you from doing that. That Tri-Sensor group, hold on a second, Tri-Sensor, that's Grant coming in. What is that you got? Tri-Sensor group is $645. Okay. Yeah, so over $645. And I had to tear half the machine apart to get to it. And I was like, holy shit. Why does this have to be this expensive for these sensors? And the machine will not run without them. So I'm this happened on Sunday, and I'm smoked. I can't do anything. It won't work. So those parts alone, and I think I've said this on this channel before, this spring I was changing the oil in Teresa's tractor, the 8530. Oil, coolant, transmission oil, cabin air filters, all the filters, all the filters, all the fluids. Just put it that way. All the filters, all the fluids, $2,200. That's one tractor. $2,200. One tractor. Wow. The oil that used to be $650 a drum, $1,100. Almost double. The filters that were $50, $60, $120, $160. Yeah, that's right. That much money. And there's a bunch of filters on that thing. 2 fuel, 1 oil, 2 hydraulic on the 2 big hydraulic filters that screw onto that thing. Huge money. $2,200. Just the drum of oil, which takes 46 gallons to fill that thing, you know, and the rest was filters, fluid, engine oil, fucking engine oil, a 30-gallon drum. I didn't even get to 55-gallon drum. I got a 30-gallon drum for $700. I was like, what in the world? What in the world is going on here? And we're at $4 corn. We're at $10 beans. Say $10 beans. Fertilizer that is, you know, when I started the mulch hay business 26 years ago, however many years ago, what was it? 27 years ago. I've been making mulch hay for 27 years. And in those 27 years, I remember nitrogen fertilizer being $140 a ton. You know, you put 200 pound to the acre of 28-13-13, which was enough to keep that going and good. I like 28-13-13. It's a great product. It's a great blend for hay. And it's like, holy smokes, now I got to leave the 13-13 out, and I can get that sourced from I can get it from another source that's cheaper and just throw nitrogen down, a small amount of nitrogen, but it's a lot more work. And that's what the whole premise of that video was. There's more work and less money. Now, I know why. You know, cheap food equals a happy population. You remember when eggs hit $7? Remember when, you know, eggs and beef now is unobtainable to a lot of people. They got it. The only place that they can buy beef that's not reasonable and it's not really good beef is from a fast food restaurant. You know, to go and buy a hamburger at the store, you're getting a lot of water. My wife, we ran out of beef. I got to get some animals in here so I can get I want at least 2 to 4 animals because I got alfalfa to feed and I got stuff that needs to be dealt with. They can go in and clean out around the equipment. They're pretty good at that. Every time I cook or she cooks a hamburger, the center puffs up really high. Why does that happen? And then when you squish it with the spatula, water shoots out. Well, because they put water in it. And it pools in the middle of the burger. And when you squish it, the water shoots out all over the place, and you can take a 1/4 pound of meat, turn it into 1/8 of a pound, and it goes from something that's that thick to something that's that thick, and takes 2 patties to get 1. Kind of ridiculous. And we don't buy cheap. We don't buy the cheap hamburger patties. We buy the better ones because it is actually better. And I'm just really disgusted that I don't have hamburger. But I do have chuck roast downstairs. And a couple days ago, we bought a KitchenAid stand mixer. And my mom and dad have a meat grinder attachment. So we're going to thaw that out, and I'm going to cut it up and grind up our meat for hamburgers, and we'll refreeze it. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, you can't refreeze meat. Yes, you can. It may not be the best for it, but you do it, especially if you grind it. And you should be all right. We should be all right, and we'll do that. I'm okay with that. So, yeah. It's just the things that they do to stretch a patty. And John Q. Public doesn't know this. Like, they'll happily go into a Burger King or a McDonald's or a Wendy's or wherever. They'll order the 1/4 pounder or the Whopper. When I was a kid, a Whopper was a Whopper. It was a big piece of burger. And now they've added so much water and whatever else into it. Yield enhancer. Just call it yield enhancers. And they've had to shrink the bun down because the patty shrinks down. So a Whopper that used to be like this, it was a Whopper of a hamburger. The Big Mac was much bigger than what it is. 2 quarter-pound pieces of meat, or maybe there were 2 quarter-pounders. I don't know if they were quarter-pound or not. They might have been, fifth of a pound. But they were bigger than what they are now. And the bun was much larger. And now it's like, huh? Now it's not even good for you, but whatever. Sometimes you're on the road and you need to eat. That light is really making me glow like a freaking, I need to put a shade on there like that. I wonder if I've got let me see if I can do this. That might help. It's the glow of the, no it's not. Anyway, yeah, so you're not even getting good food when you go to these restaurants, any of the restaurants. And if you go to a fancy restaurant like Cracker Barrel, I'm just joking. Cracker Barrel used to be a really good place to go eat. COVID happens. They didn't change the price of the menu, but they changed what you were getting. And it is not very good anymore. It used to be a lot better. And everybody was in an uproar because of the woke agenda that kind of took over Cracker Barrel there for a nanosecond. But, thankfully they came to their senses, and I hope they fired that broad, but, you never know. He's leftist woke liberal ideologies that seep into a nostalgia-themed restaurant. I like Cracker Barrel. I'm not going to lie. I like to go in there and see the old farm equipment, an old gun, and try to guess what that model is. You get a lot of Stevens and and stuff like that, but Savages and old firearm companies and and things like that, and the different hand equipment that was used back 100 years ago, and even more recent than that, but it's up there. The different seed brands like Garst and Funks and those that are long gone. I think Dobler's is out now. It was T.A. Dobler for a little while, but I think he's sold out now, and it's not even, I don't think Dobler's is even in existence. Jocks, Jocks was another seed company. We used to buy Jocks seed, and it was really good. It had deep kernels. I don't know why, but whoever was breeding that, man, they had really deep kernels, thin but deep. And I liked them. They shelled out really good. But, you get these, I like the Cracker Barrel, but the food is no good anymore, so we just don't go in there. And as a matter of fact, I'm spoiled. I come home, my wife has a 4-course meal for me every day. I've gained a little bit of weight, but I've lost it back now because, I cut sugar out. Even though I did make cookies yesterday and I had a couple of cookies, but whatever. I can cheat once in a while, can't I? But yeah, I think that what's going to happen in agriculture is there's going to be a lot of bankrupt farmers. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to grow the food, because you're going to have other people that want to take over that piece of ground, and you really don't matter anyway. If I was to quit tomorrow, and just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm just selling all the equipment and I'm done, and go work for the township for the next 15 years of my life, right? Which I could do, I guess. I wouldn't do it, but, I'd have a hard time with that. But if I did that, the land would still get farmed. There would be nothing fallow. There would be 4 other guys that would take up my ground. And then they would go down the same slippery slope that a lot of other people do. Overexpansion, too fast, not enough manpower, not enough equipment. Because the bigger you get, the more equipment you need. The more equipment you need, the bigger you need to get. The bigger you need to get, the more equipment you need. The more fertilizer you use, the more this, the more that. And the thinner, it seems like the thinner that profit margin gets for you. And, that's how a lot of this goes. It's a dog chasing its tail. And right now, farming is at the point where I think the dog has caught its tail now, and it doesn't know what to do. I've got a plan. I do have a plan. And it's not leaving agriculture. There's a lot of people saying, oh, it sounds like you're going to quit. I'm not going to quit. I'm quitting corn and soybeans, but I'm not going to quit putting seeds in the ground. I'm going to put a lot back into hay. But there is still there's a crop that I'm going to grow. Excuse me, I'll get to hang now. There's a crop that I'm going to grow, and it's a direct-to-consumer crop. So, it'll be all me. I'll be doing it. And instead of the middleman making the money, I'll make the money. Yay! Hopefully. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's no skin off my ass. I actually have a market for bulk, and I can ship it out. If it doesn't work out the way I want it to work out, then I can ship it out and still recover my crop, the money that I put in, and probably make a profit at it. And then next year I'll do twice as much and lose money. That's just the way that works. But anyways, thanks for watching. It's 25 minutes in. I don't think anybody wants to watch that much more of it anyway. So, yeah, have a nice day.